If you follow me on Instagram, there's something called Useless Trivia of the Day. It's something I post every morning without fail, and I've been doing it for the past 6 years now. It usually has some trivia from various categories. There is no fixed category. Someday it could be about science, and someday it could be about sports, music, or there's no category. The reason why I have it that way is because I have an old habit of making notes. Like every time I read something interesting, I note it down. Not specifically because I have to use it later as useless review of the day, but because I just like noting down stuff because it helps me retain some of the information. In that spirit, I'll be sharing some trivia with you tonight. I hope at least some of them are interesting for you. So, in languages, one word or a name could mean something and it could mean something completely different in another language. So, for example, Uma, which is quite a popular name, which has Sanskrit roots, it means night in Sanskrit. Uh, but the same word means nation in Aramaic and Hebrew, and even the Arabic Ummah as the same root of nationhood. So, uh, the words can transcend language. So that is something very interesting. Like the name Amit in Sanskrit means limitless, like someone who is unlimited or has no boundaries. The same word Amit in Hebrew means a friend. But then there are words which have the same meaning. It could be random. Like I recently read that in an Aboriginal language from Australia, the word for dog is dog. Now that is amazing. Given that there was no lingual transmission between that tribe and the colonial powers that overtook Australia. So that is a rarity, obviously, but it's very interesting, like how language always has this this myth and this history to it, the history of evolution. So that I find very interesting. Uh, Similarly, the word priest comes from the Greek word presbys. Now, presbys you might be familiar with, Presbyterian. So presbys means elder in Greek, and it actually means someone who leads the cattle. So it has a farming and agrarian root to it. Although in modern terms, priest is obviously has a completely religious, ecumenical root to it. But going by the past, going by its root, it's something completely different. Moving on to something else, nearly 85% of all living beings on this planet belong to the insect family. Now, if you find that interesting, you would be amazed to know that more than a quarter of the world's population intentionally eats insects on a regular basis. So before you go EU or something, you must understand that cultures define diet. For someone who has eaten chicken all his life, uh, it's perfectly all right to have chicken. But for someone who hasn't had chicken, and to that person, it might be distasteful and might be difficult to understand, because that's when we realize that food and diet are more of cultural habits than anything else. Moving on to America, so in America, there's a rule that no president, if they are in office or if they have left office, they are not allowed to drive on public roads. So you'll never see Donald Trump driving, or for that matter, even Obama. If you remember that episode from Comedians in Car with Jerry Seinfeld, Obama is featured in one of the episodes. Uh, it's hard to understand why a non-comedic person is featured in a comedic show, but then it's hard to difficult why Obama got Nobel Peace Prize in the first place. So by rule, he's not allowed to drive cars on public roads, and that's why you'll notice that particular instance where uh, he wants to drive but he can't. So he's bound by rules that he can't drive because there are security concerns. When a POTUS or a former POTUS drives on public road. Scotland has a strange thing going on for it in the world of sports. So it has never progressed past the group stage of any international competition. This despite the fact that it is the joint oldest team in the world, national team in the world. The joint means it obviously shares that honor with England. So it has the downside too, like it has never progressed. 59 of the 60 oldest living people in the world today are women. So maybe by nature or by design, women tend to live longer. And this is across all cultures and countries, across geographies. So it's interesting to know that 59 of the world's 60 oldest people are women. So most Europeans today are descendants of Charlemagne, just like most Asians, especially on the eastern side, are direct descendants of Genghis Khan, or as Indians call it, Genghis Khan. Swiss Air Force is very interesting because it's only available during business hours, which means it is active only between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. So this practice came into question when a hijacking incident happened in 2014, when Swiss Air Force refused to answer calls. So the French and the Italian pilots had to save the day for Swiss. They weren't available for at least 2 hours, and then they took over. But it's very interesting to read about it. Uh, Saddam Hussein, as you know, was a very multifaceted dictator, ruler, whatever you want to call him. He was also an author. He wrote in published books, not ghostwriting. He actually wrote them and all. And in uh, in the 80s, or maybe in the 80s before Gulf War, he even had a trust fund called Montana Management. Now you might think that Montana might be a tribute to Montana, the place in America, but no. He was a fan of Scarface, Al Pacino's character, Tony Montana. So he called the trust fund uh, Montana Management. Similarly, Osama bin Laden was an Arsenal fan. It's very interesting, like when you look at these characters who especially from the eastern side of the world, and when you read more about them, you realize that they tend to be very global in their outlook, although in public they might sing a different tune. uh, it's urine, not chlorine, that causes your eyes to go red in swimming pool. So you might have that experience, like everybody has, like whoever has been to swimming pool. So the water apparently, uh, the chlorine hardly has anything to do with the redness in your eyes. It's people's urine. So you might be aware of chlamydia, the sexually transmitted disease. In koalas, it doesn't happen the way it doesn't. It's not transmitted the way it is transmitted in humans, since they acquire it through stress, through tension. So if a dog barks at a koala, which is otherwise a very calm animal, marsupial, it might get chlamydia because of the stress that is induced by the barking. So that is very interesting. Lastly, hearing cells in our ears can't grow back. So your ears have the only type of cells that can't grow back. Everything else in your body, the cells especially, can grow back. I don't know the reason why this is so, but it's very interesting to know this. Similarly, I read that of all the five senses, the last sense that will leave you once you die is your hearing. Your taste, your eyesight, everything will move away. But the last thing to leave you will be your hearing power, which is more interesting when you think about it. A situation where you're dying and people assume you're dead, but your ear is the last one to pass out or log out. And it can hear somebody telling that you are an asshole. I find that possibility amazing.